Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Outside the Echo Chamber from inside the state capitol during the legislative session. I'm your host, Rick Lord, and today we are going to be talking about House Bill 5018. It's an environmental bill with specific language in it that is open for interpretation and causing a lot of controversy within the chambers. And joining me now to discuss that bill, what it does and perhaps more importantly doesn't allow, are a couple of delegates. Evan Hansen from Mon County. Thank you for joining us today, Evan.
Thanks for having me.
And Bob Fehrenbacher from Wood County. Gentlemen,
thank you.
Just a cursory look at this from an outsider's point of view. I looked at the bill, and again, I'm just a layman here. It appears as though there is some language in that bill that would restrict what type of information and data that is collected by a person could be shared and then used by an agency such as the DMP to enforce regulations. I know that, as with many bills, it's the semantics of the bill that begins the arguments of, well, is this really doing what we think it's doing, or what are the effects of this? Bob, I'll begin with you because I know that you're a big supporter of this bill. Just talk a little bit about it. I believe it's Section 8 that's causing a lot of the conflict here.
Section G,
Or
perhaps?
Section G, excuse me.
Yes.
Sometimes I get my numbers and letters confused. That's why I went into journalism.
Well, I'll let my friend from Mon County add to my comments if I am inaccurate or incomplete. But basically, Section G prohibits the use of this data in legal actions. It does not prohibit nor necessarily discourage the use of citizens gathering this information and frankly sharing it with bodies, whether that's their community, their neighborhood, or even the DEP. But it cannot be brought into a legal proceeding. Okay,
so in other words, just trying to use my brain here, if you gather the information yourself and then share it with the DEP, they can look at that, they can maybe use that, but they would still have to have their own investigation and not just go on what you're telling them. Is that accurate?
Yes, I think that's accurate. And frankly, if you look at the data or the information that's available broadly on the internet provided by the DEP, provided by the EPA, the monitors that may be used to gather that data are not necessarily utilizing the practices and, if you will, even the code specified, federal code specified methods and instrumentation to gather the samples and analyze them.
A lot of times when there's some vague language in a bill or broad language that can be open for interpretation, it can cause problems. And I know, Evan, from your perspective, there's probably some concern over the way that this is worded and the way that it might actually be used in practice.
I do have pretty significant concerns. And just to clarify, there's two different portions of the bill. One portion prevents the Department of Environmental Protection from using the data in regulatory actions, but a separate section is what prohibits that data from being used in court. So it's very explicit about those two different aims of the bill. And regarding that, I have some significant concerns about that, because there's already procedures in place for a judge to make a determination about any data that's presented to court, and to either allow the data to be admitted or not, or possibly to say that he's going to give it the weight that it deserves based on.
So this would eliminate even the option for the judge to accept that type of information.
This says you shall not even allow it into court. And just think about that. We have an adversarial legal system where both sides are allowed to present their best data and information and let the judge decide. This bill tips those scales. It allows the data to be submitted from the factory or the manufacturing facility, but it doesn't allow the data to be considered from the other side. And that's fundamentally unfair and probably unconstitutional.
Is that a fair argument, that limiting the type of information that could be used? What's wrong with more information, right? That helps you make better informed decisions.
Well, it depends on the perspective that you draw from the language in the bill. I'll cite Section B, which allows the Secretary of the DEP to consider monitoring data, but where it is installed, operated, and maintained in accordance with the manufacturer's guidance or requirements and all applicable United States Environmental Protection Agency standards or state quality control guidance and rules. So there is data that's being generated, But the question is, how did you gather it? What is the accuracy of the information, and should, if you will, bad data be accepted and regulatory action or court action, litigation, be promulgated based upon, if you will, flawed information? So that's, in my mind, the real kind of crux of this issue is that the instrumentation and the sampling methodologies and all that are not the same standards that are being, frankly, recommended or federally required by the EPA. And then the DEP doesn't have its own separate and unique standards. It references, standards that are created and studied and, if you will, endorsed by the EPA.
Now there's a procedural wrench that was thrown into this bill. Last week we had public hearing, we heard impassioned speeches from both sides, and an amendment from Larry Rowe that was struck down by voice vote was tabled. Turns out it tabled the entire bill. So yesterday you guys had to go back in there and start reworking everything, and it's back open now. Evan, is there something that you would like to see done? Is there any language that you would like to see tweaked or struck altogether that would make you happy with 5018?
Well, Delegate Rowe's amendment was a good amendment because it still would preserve the language about using good data, but it took out the language that prevented it from being used in court. Because the main issue here is that, just think about what's changed. Why did the Manufacturers Association attorney write this bill? They wrote this bill because the only data that we've had in the past was data collected at the smokestack or at the fence line. But now that there's more and more community groups collecting data in the actual communities where the air pollution might actually impact people, they want to make sure that that data is not used. That's what's changed, is that there's more data at the locations where it actually impacts people that might be getting asthma as a result of air pollution or something like that. So that's why this is a pretty radical bill to basically say you shall not use data in court. You shall not even have the opportunity to present your case to a judge and let them decide the weight that they want to give to that evidence.
Now, Bob, you have history with chem wars.
Oh, I do.
So do you understand why people are saying, oh, well, I see what's going on here?
Well, I understand, if you will, the suspicion that's being created. But I can tell you, and we actually had testimony in committee where the attorney for the DEP came and in response to a question said, if somebody brought you data, brought you information, what would the DEP do? And they said they would respond. So any of us can go and look online and find data about the accuracy of these methods. But let me just cite one thing. Well, I'll make a point before I go to that. The EPA in 2022, actually they announced it in 21, made available $20 million to be used in support of, community air monitoring. So they took applications for that, and then they made awards. I'm frankly not aware where all the money was, appropriated, but they made that available to support community air monitoring. But they recognize, and I'm going to cite something that was just published in November of last year from the federal EPA Region 3. These sensors are not federal equivalent methods or federal reference methods. Those are the methods that I referred to in the past. And the data from these sensors are not applicable to regulatory decision making for the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So those are the rules by which the Environmental Protection Agency has said is that these are, if you will, are the limits. So things like particulate matter, ozone, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, those got to be kept below those levels for all of our health and well-being. But these monitors are good, but to me they kind of show trends. Are they up? Are they down? Are they about the average? But is it a humid day? Is it a rainy day? Does that make the numbers go up? And so therefore there are some problematic issues with just accepting and using the data without the methodology and the safeguards that are in these other EPA specified methods.
It sounds to me that it's almost the argument of, well, if just a random West Virginian takes these findings and gives them to the DEP, well, you're not an expert. we're not even going to consider that kind of evidence.
But that's why it should be up to the court. You know, I've been involved in court cases with environmental data. The first thing that happens is that the other side tries to exclude the data. They challenge it, as they should. It's an adversarial legal process, as it should be. And if the judge agrees that the data is bogus or doesn't deserve to be considered, he'll throw it out of court. We already have a system for doing that. We don't need to forbid its use. We just need to trust our judges to make a good decision.
I think I know what your answer is going to be here, but just taking all the legislative stuff out of it, the mumbo jumbo, the legalese, from just a West Virginian's point of view, does this bill, is it good for the average West Virginian that has lived with environmental concerns probably their whole life?
This is bad because we're finally going to have some data to demonstrate whether the air is clean or dirty where people live. And what this bill says is that if we discover that the air is dirty where people live, agencies can't use it, courts can't consider it, and that means people are going to be less healthy. I would think that the Manufacturers Association would be supportive of community air monitoring efforts, because if they're doing their job correctly, nothing's going to show up. It's going to be clean where people live.
And I think everyone would like a marriage between the environment and business. Nobody's trying to keep business out of West Virginia. They just want to make sure that everything is being done respectfully and with the environment in mind. And I think your take is that this bill doesn't limit that at all, that this bill is an environmental bill that actually can help with making sure that we're doing things the right way and that things are buttoned up, so to speak.
Well, that's right. I mean, for less than $300, a citizen can go get a purple air monitor and install it in their backyard or in their neighborhood or whatever, and monitor local conditions and take that and use it. And frankly, you can go to Purple Air online and look at this region. It's really easy. And you can get a sense, okay, and then that information can be shared with the DEP. You know, if there is something that the data would say, hey, this is different than normal, is there something going on, would you look into that?
Evan, what do you think happens with 5018? Where are we going from here?
Well, I'm sure we'll have a vigorous debate today, but, you know, I think I call this the see no evil, hear no evil, say no evil bill, and I stand by that. Burying your head in the sand and just pretending this data doesn't exist isn't good policy.
Bob, any room for compromise with Section G or any language that'll get struck or amended or in any way tweaked?
No, I support the bill as written, and with the rejection of that amendment. I think it's a good bill. It does not prevent monitoring from being done, but it basically prescribes, how it can be used.
Does it make West Virginians safer?
It doesn't negatively impact the safety. As a matter of fact, the prevalence of these monitors is an enhancement. And to my friend from Mon County, I believe that yes, there will be more monitors. They will be used to share information within the community with our regulators, and that will lead to improvements.
You probably disagree with that statement.
Why keep them out of court? Why bury your head in the sand and prevent them from being used in court and given the weight that they deserve by a judge?
All right, well, gentlemen, thank you for your discussion today. Bob Fehrenbacher, Evan Hansen. We'll continue to monitor the discussion in the House as this rolls on. And coming up next, we will speak with the Manufacturers Association and someone representing the West Virginia Environmental Coalition to get their take on House Bill 5018 when Outside the Echo Chamber continues.
Dutch Miller Automotive, we've grown quite a bit over the last 60 years, but our core principles remain the same. We believe in treating our customers and our team members like friends and family. And we see it as our obligation to give back to all the communities we are so fortunate to do business in. In just West Virginia alone, we've grown from one location on the west end of Huntington to 10 rooftops employing more than 500 Mountaineers. Check out the inventory from all of our stores at DutchMillerAuto.com. Dutch Miller Automotive Group, West Virginia proud.
At CAMC, our focus has always been on building better healthcare for you. Our new Center for Learning and Research combines cutting-edge technology with hands-on experience for physicians, nurses, and other caregivers. Using specially designed simulation rooms and robotics with expert instruction, our learners expand their expertise. Because you deserve the most advanced care possible, now and in the years to come. Welcome to the future of medicine.
The HD Media Plus app is your ticket to see all the action on the hard court as it happens.
Saunders with the three.
Sam's banks it in! Sam's from three, buries it off the glass! And the Red
Dozens of live games that you won't see anywhere else, featuring some of the best teams in the state. Watch the game live or later at your convenience, and the best part, it's free. Download the HD Media Plus app today to your smartphone or TV so you won't miss another shot.
Welcome back inside the state capitals. We continue our discussion on House Bill 5018, and right now we're going to be talking with some agencies and associations, some West Virginians that this is affecting. And as is often the case with bills, it's open to interpretation, and a lot of it is a semantic argument about what the bill does or doesn't do. And I know that you guys both have differing opinions on that, and we'll dive into that a little bit. Bill Bissett is the president of the West Virginia Manufacturers Association, and Lucia Valentine is representing the West Virginia Environmental Council. So we'll have some different perspectives on this bill from both of you. And Bill, I'll get to you in a second. I want to begin with you, Lucia, because I want to get your take on, specifically in the language that is causing some concern here, what this bill does, or perhaps more importantly, doesn't allow from your perspective.
Yeah, so House Bill 5018 says that community air monitoring data cannot be used for regulatory or attainment purposes under Section 110 and 319 of the Clean Air Act. So we understand that. We know that this data is already not being used for regulatory purposes. And so our main concern is under Section G, which says that vetted and verified community air monitoring data cannot be used as evidence in court. And so that concerns us because we don't believe that we should be legislating what evidence can or cannot be used in court. We have a judicial system set up in place for that, and we believe that we should leave that up to the experts, the agencies, and the courts to decide what data is appropriate.
Now, I took a cursory look at the bill. It appears as though there is some vague language in there, and I know bills try not to be vague, but there is some language that has nuance and open to interpretation about what could or couldn't be allowed. Your take is, for instance, just to give an anecdotal approach to this, if there were to be a spill and a resident would go out to the banks and collect data from that and then offer that up to the DEP or somebody like that, this bill, in your opinion, stipulates that that information or that data could then not be used as part of the investigation or litigation.
Yeah, so if there was, an issue in my neighborhood where I live, and there was some pollution that's cause for concern that's been found on a community air monitoring data, if DEP were to come out and to further investigate this, pollution that was caught on a community air monitor and corroborate that data and verify that, okay, we do have an issue here, that data then could not be used in court, and that's what we have an issue with. If it's been verified and vetted, and DEP has done its job, which they do a great job of vetting this data already, and has come out and corroborated that there is an issue in my neighborhood, that data needs to be accessible to the courts and used as evidence if needed. So I don't think we should be limiting the use of that verified data.
Bill, I know that you have a different stance on what this bill does or doesn't allow.
That's correct, Rick, and thanks for your interest. We are in no way against community monitoring. Community monitoring has gone on for a long time. It's going to go on in the future. The question is, how is that data used? And when you have government, when you have, I think, official testing by authorized agents, that should be used for enforcement actions. But we've heard from DEP officials under oath that, if Lucia's group would bring them information collected by monitoring, they will investigate. I mean, they will respond to that. But I think the question is the objectivity of that information. If it's from an environmental group, for example, if let's say PETA, the People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, is testing outside a cattle farm, they could be tempted to skew that information for their own political means, and that's a concern to us. We want objective data that shows real information, but as far as the value of collecting that information, it's valuable. The agencies have said, again, under oath, they will respond to it. The EPA has said the same. But the idea that could be used as an enforcement action, and then groups, environmental groups could be seen as de facto, regulatory agencies, that's a real concern to us.
So it's not saying that it can't be used, it's just saying it can't be taken at face value. In other words, if they come to the DEP with this information, the DEP would still have to conduct their own investigation and not just say, okay, well, we're just going to take this at face value.
Correct. And, I think when you look at, the EPA's loaning of this equipment, which came out in November, they actually say that there are concerns that some of it may not be able to use for particulate matter because of the quality of machinery or possibly the nature of training. And again, we have no problem with community monitoring. The question is, to be used for an enforcement action just feels dangerous. It would be like someone getting a radar gun because they're worried about speeding in their neighborhood. You know, they can monitor that, share it with the law enforcement, but they can't hand out speeding tickets.
The cop couldn't write a ticket because your radar gun said.
But they could then set up their own speed trap and say, hey, people are speeding and we're responding to it, which is, we're absolutely fine with it.
Now, this bill has gone through a lot of twists and turns, and just yesterday they realized that they thought they were tabling an amendment, but they ended up tabling the whole bill. So now it's back in the limelight, and Larry Rowe's going to have a chance to argue his amendment again. Is there anything, Lucia, that you'd like to see maybe done, tweak maybe some of the language there to make it a little more subjective instead of objective instead of subjective?
Yeah, certainly. So I appreciate what Bill is sharing, and we know that the bill doesn't limit community air monitoring in itself, but it does limit what data can or cannot be used. And we do want effective verified data that's been collected. We don't want we know that this data can't be used for regulatory purposes right now, and so the bill says that, but that's already happening. DP is already doing a good job of vetting that data. And so I think that, again, our concern is more so with Section G that says that verified data that was initially brought about by community air monitoring data, that DEP has gone out and corroborated and verified that there is an issue, this is real data, that should be up to be used as evidence. We should not be legislating what can or cannot be used as evidence in court. And so I think our main issue with the bill right now is the broadness of Section G, and that, again, we should not be legislating what can or cannot be used as evidence in court.
Is that a fair argument?
I think when you look at all the industry groups that support this legislation, when you look at the Western Union Chamber, the Western Union Manufacturers, the Coal Association, the Oil and Gas Association, we are, once again, no way against community monitoring. But our concern is, I think, the appearance, and I think the US EPA and the Biden administration, when they passed this legislation to expand these programs, wanted it to appear like a regulatory agency. We just want to make clarity here in West Virginia to employers that you do have safe harbor. If you do something wrong, there's going to be an investigation. That's fine, but you're not going to be accused by groups that may have different political purposes than you of doing wrong when you haven't, when the evidence isn't there. But it's definitely not a waste of time. That information can be shared with DEP. DEP's been very clear. They want the information. They will respond. But again, we just want that protection because we think it's a very fair standard.
For the average West Virginian who's looking in on this and they're saying, okay, well, of course coal companies aren't going to like this bill. Of course chemical companies won't like this bill. When you talk about the optics of this, anytime you're dealing with a bill that could even be open for interpretation as limiting the types of information that can be shared,
yep.
Do you see the argument there that, well, they're hiding something?
Great question. I think it's how you approach employers or corporate America. There are those of us who work for them, who know the people personally who work there. And, are there bad actors? Of course, but there's also wonderful companies that provide opportunities and scholarships and education, and we have to recognize that. But I think to have a legal standard of, innocent before proven guilty is a basic tenet of this country. But that said, we're in a renaissance of manufacturing right now. We have companies coming here to do business. And if we would have an unfair standard here, why not go to Ohio? Why not go to Kentucky? Other states that I think are going to pass very similar legislation. I just want to know that you can come here and have a fair shake when it comes to regulatory control.
And I'm sure that from the Environmental Council's point of view, nobody's against bringing businesses to West Virginia and trying to improve the economy, but not at the sake of the health of the people. And when you talk to people on the ground, environmental concerns have been married to West Virginia for decades now.
Yeah.
What is the feedback that you're getting from people about, at some point we have to figure out how to compromise here and how to make it best for everybody?
Yeah, certainly. I do think that this bill sends the wrong message to those who are, burdened with air pollution. This bill shows that we are trying to limit the use of verified community monitoring data, and that should not be the case. This community air monitoring data can help us prevent and inform, future disasters from happening. And so I think that we really need to be protecting those who are identifying pollution in their neighborhoods, where they live, and we need to, accept that evidence, that verified evidence, as legitimate, and protect those who are being burdened by air pollution.
So in lieu of just striking Section 8 or maybe just striking the bill in general, is there a 5818 that you can live with? What's that bill look like that you think the Environmental Council would be okay with?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly we would love to come to the table and work on, a compromise on the bill. I think that Section G is our main concern, so we would want to focus on that and work with our partners on Section G. So,
Bill, same question for you. Is there room for compromise here? What would the Manufacturers Association get behind?
Well, I think we're here talking right now, and there's communication beyond that as well, both before the bill and after, and that conversation will continue. But, in the end, I would suggest this to the environmental community. You've had more discussion probably these last 2 weeks on community air monitoring than you've had since it was launched by the Biden administration in this expanded role. So if nothing else, I think you've got it in the headlines now, you've got it, public attention, and that should be helpful to their recruitment efforts. That said, it comes back to how the data is used, and that's our concern. We're going to be pretty solid on that because, again, that radar gun analogy, it just seems patently unfair that groups that may have opposite opinions of my members might be collecting data that can be used against them.
Now, just on Friday, it seemed like this bill was on its way, and now it's kind of up in the air again. How confident are you that some form of 5018 will get through the House?
I think it will. We feel good about its chances. We've been communicating a lot with the legislature, but at the same time, it's a legislative process, so I guess that's why they pay lobbyists.
Lucia, what about you? You think this will end up getting through and over to the Senate?
I mean, we're definitely going to be, continuing to advocate against this bill, particularly for the reasons around Section G that I outlined. So we shall see what happens. Like Bill said, it's a legislative process, and it can be unpredictable at times, but we're going to continue to raise our voice against this. So
unpredictable is a good word. One thing I can predict is that I'm going to go get some pancakes. It's Tucker County Day. I would suggest you guys.
Preston County Day, sir.
Preston County, sorry.
My wife would kill me.
Oh my goodness, where did I come up with Tucker? I think I had skiing on
It's
my
all
mind.
good. It's all good.
Preston County, the buckwheat pancakes are phenomenal, so try them out before you guys
They smell great.
get out of here. Thank you, Bill Bissett, Lucia Valentine. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate
We'll be right back with more Echo Chamber after this.
When it comes to surgical care, you want the best hands behind the robot. And those are ours. Choose Mon Health. Feel the difference.
Are you ready to unlock a future filled with remarkable pay, unbeatable benefits, and unparalleled satisfaction? Imagine embarking on a journey that offers you a college-level education without the weight of debt, all while earning a steady income. Look no further than the West Virginia Building and Construction Trades Apprenticeship Programs. Join us, and together, let's build a future that's brighter and stronger. Go to actwv.org to apply today. The West Virginia Building and Construction Trades, where the future is forged.
Welcome back inside the state capitol. That's going to do it for another episode of Outside the Echo Chamber. We'd like to thank our guests today, Bill Bissett, the president of the West Virginia Manufacturers Association, Lucia Valentine, representing the West Virginia Environmental Coalition, and delegates Evan Hansen and Bob Fehrenbacher. But we'll be back on Thursday with another episode of Outside the Echo Chamber, talking about issues important to you and your family. Until then, I'm Rick Lord. Take care.